All right, it's 12:30. I want to get started on time. So those of you that are here, we're glad you are here. We've got three presenters, right? Or just two? Two presenters to tell you about what's going on. But the big thing you want to pay attention to is this date, March 22nd, 2 p.m. That is when we're holding our church conference to vote on what we're talking about. The reason we're picking March 22nd at 2 p.m. is because the DS, the district superintendent, sets the date. She already has another event up here that afternoon at 3 o'clock, so instead of having to come back at a second trip, she gave us the 2 o'clock time slot. So there you go. That's why it's that date. And now, without further ado, Julia Harris. Woo!
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. Sorry, time change. So we are here today to discuss an amendment to an existing contract. So this is with our Williamson property. And as you recall, we're already under contract to sell the northernmost part of that property. So on this map, it would be the red and the blue is already under contract for sale. The kind of orangish color is what we want to maintain for our church. That's about 25 buildable acres. That's what Guide Team has determined would be the most that we would possibly ever want to, if we wanted to build or whatever we want to do out there, that's what we want to hold on to. The rest is basically up for sale. The amendment to our contract, this would be with our same buyer, says that he would like to also purchase the green area. And that was a parcel that we didn't have a buyer for. So this would basically mean that one buyer would be buying everything that we want to sell. We would still maintain our 25 acres, but the buyer would like to have basically everything else. It turns out to be about an additional 10 buildable acres. There's more acreage there than 10 acres because of wetlands and buffer zones and things like that, but about another 10 to 12 buildable acres. He's offering the same price that he's paying for the acres that we've already agreed to sell, which is $217,000 per acre. So this will be up for vote on March 22nd, whether we agree to move forward with this amended contract or not. Tom's going to talk to you a little bit about how the county has been involved with this and the retention issues.
Good morning, all. I'm Tom Hart. I serve on the negotiating team, along with Bob Wilson, who's here also. They asked me to speak a little bit about the county's involvement and how it impacts what you're being asked to consider. As Julia mentioned, our original contract, which is still in effect, was for the red and the blue parcels. That's what our buyer had determined that he wanted to use and would fit his purposes. About the same time we were negotiating the contract, the county officially, unofficially, in a very sort of relaxed way, informed us that they were looking at acquiring acreage in the leftmost parcel, the red part, that little, what I call a panhandle on the end, to put a retention because they had funding sources to begin the process of the widening of Williamson Boulevard. What they had was money to buy retention area to handle the water overflow that would be generated by four-laning Williamson Boulevard. Then they basically went silent when we started to ask, what does that mean? Where are you looking? Can you tell us some more? And we spent the greater part of the last year trying to identify what they had and would they think about talking with us about that. We went ahead with our contract with our buyer, recognizing the fact that the county was involved, and part of that consideration is what made him determine in our contract to add the blue part to his original target of the red. Now, we have had some sessions in the latter part of 2019 with the county where they finally came forward and identified a whole series of maybe a half a dozen or thereabout of potential locations for their retention area, all but one of which were on the church's property, projected to be on the church's property. They were alternatives of where to locate it on there. Some were okay, some we didn't like very much at all. One was across the road, which they ruled out of hand because that would impact somebody else who's already under development plans for it. The result of that conversation, we included our buyer in a couple of those sessions, is it caused him to reflect a little bit more about what it means. And he came forward with this proposal because he is approaching the county saying, let me as the developer build a potential retention pond that would cover not only the county's water retention needs, but also his, and conceivably some of the churches. We thought, that's okay, that's a good idea. That seems like a cooperative solution rather than just butting heads with the county. They're sort of funny. We get mixed signals. We don't have a clear indication necessarily, other than they still want to do it. Well, our buyer came back to us after our last session and said, let's see if we can facilitate this. He's looked at his project and considered what he wants to build, and he thinks he can address the uncertainty by just saying, let me take everything that you all don't want to keep, meaning everything but the 25 upland acres we want, and less what the county finally decides it wants to buy. And that's really what we're doing. We're agreeing to do that. Well, that's what they're saying. But I use buying in a loose term because they haven't filed formal action. They haven't started any sort of eminent domain proceedings. You could ask the county council, do they know of any proceedings that are set forward to file suit for eminent domain? And you won't find it on the public record. This is a staff-driven process, which is part of our frustration about not being able to make it move faster. Right. Oh, I know. Yeah, I know about all this. Well, let me give you the short answer, because us getting into engineering design work is pretty tricky. But my understanding, and what I will share with you is how I understand it, is the design work that's done is to service what's already built for road work and for improvements. Advent Health built their retention based on what they see their current and future needs are. There isn't capacity for additional work other than what's theirs. And the approval process for the people across Williamson, that new development, they will be addressing their own that they generate, not for the road work. So the county, what the county wants to do doesn't allow them to tap into those to deal with anything else. They've got to create new retention for their new projected use. That they've identified, yeah, the rest is pretty much all committed. Right. So going back to why we're here today, is our buyer, instead of leaving us with that 10-acre green stripe that would still be ours to sell to someone else, has come forward and said, I will agree to buy all of it at the same price that you've asked to sell us to buy it for, and then we will continue down the road and work out wherever the county wants to put the retention area that we can agree to. Then we will reduce what I buy by that amount, and the rest I'll have to do the project I want to do. So for us, that makes it very simple. You know, we're getting our asking price for everything that we can sell. We're still preserving the ability for us to negotiate really in cooperation with our buyer, which is a good thing, and move the process along. So. I don't know of any plans to build anything out there. I think that's a potential, but unless there's something happened in the last 2 months that I don't know about because I'm in the dark, it isn't. There may be out there, but that's not part of what our demand needs now. All that's been identified, Julia, the guide team, has approved retaining 25 usable acres for whatever purpose ends up out there, that we can decide in the future what it's actually going to be. I'm now talking beyond my portfolio as a member of the negotiating team, so I want to hand it back to you. No. Williamson is the long arm. Yeah, this is oriented to where north is to the left rather than to the top. Okay. That's correct.
Yeah, as far as expanding westward, Guide Team has approved a new staff member to come in to help give us an idea of what's going to be needed out west. So before we talk anything about building anything out there, our first step is to see what's needed. So we're at the very, very beginning as far as what's going to happen out west. We don't know. So we're holding on to that piece of property for the in case, but we don't know what's going out there. We may not, right? That's not on the plans. We're not planning any building out there right now. We can, yeah. Exactly. It's going to really be dependent on the needs of that community. Correct, right. But their job is going to be to kind of be boots on the ground out in that area and to get a good assessment of what is needed out there. So they can use the property, but we don't have any plans for any building there right now. So the first thing they'll be doing is just getting in touch with the people in that community to see what is going to work best for them. There's a whole rainbow of ideas as to what church can look like now, and it's going to depend on what the people out there are looking for. Any other questions? It's about 30 acres. Is that right? That'd be about 10 more, 40 and 25, right? So we have about 72 total acres out there. That includes all of the wetlands and buffer zones. But buildable acres would be they'll end up with about 30 to 42 or so. We'll keep 25. Thank you.
All right, so that's what we got for you. The Thursday night we'll have question and answers. Anybody got questions or answers or concerns? These two folks up here, or these three folks right here, know more about this than anybody else. So it's a really, for me, it's a really good thing. It takes us, in my basic way, Tom, I don't know if you worded it this way, but we sell all the property and we don't have to deal with the county, right? So to speak. Possibly. Keep all our options open. Best thing for us to do, right? That's all right. No, your question, we are talking about putting a pastor of the West, somebody to do something, but the mentality, and I don't mean this in a negative way, you're old school. You're thinking back in the day, you build a church and people will come. We don't do that anymore. You got to figure out how to get the people there, and then you think about how to build the church. Old school way is build the church and the people will come. Methodist church, and most every church right now, is put somebody out there, put somebody in an area, let them start developing, loving people, doing just what Julia said, and then we'll figure out what to do. Yeah, you need to know for 11 years I didn't meet in a building. I didn't have a building to do a new church start. So I went 11 years setting up and tearing down every week. And we grew up with the church, we had 500 people coming every week, setting up and tearing down in the school cafeteria. So no, 8 lanes wide. No. Oh, down the LPGA? How about? All right. So if you had questions Thursday night, and then the vote is March 22nd, 2 p.m. And yes, you need to be present to vote, is our understanding. Peace out. This will be online tomorrow.